How safe is your home network and how can you make it safer? As far as the first question, it's literally as safe as you want to make it, but how can you make it safer? Well, I'm going to show you. First, we're going to start with your modem and your router. Should you do a modem router combo or should you buy them separately? Most ISPs will actually provide the modem router combo simply because it's easier for them to install and it's also cheaper to buy as one product. I personally buy them separately because I simply feel that it's more secure. Plus, I have my modem downstairs in my office and I have my router upstairs in my living room. So I got them in two different areas. So for me, having them separate makes sense. But also, is it safer to have the separate devices? Well, that's up for debate. Some people say yes, some people say no. I personally think that it is safer, and here's why. I can have one password for my modem and a completely different password for my router, which in my opinion adds a second layer of security, because if you only have the modem and router combo, then you only have one password for both devices. So it's a little bit harder or a little bit easier to hack into versus having two separate passwords. Also, it's best to change the admin credentials on your router and modem if possible to anything other than admin or root. Most routers have two frequencies that they run off of, which are going to be a 2.4 gigahertz frequency and a 5 gigahertz frequency. They also typically allow for a guest network. So essentially what you're looking at is two frequencies for your private network, two frequencies for your guest network. So you've got a total of 4 wireless networks with most modern modem or routers. I say shut down the guest network completely. Chances are you don't have enough traffic and enough different people coming by to use it to necessarily need it. Plus, more networks means more way for someone to hack into your network. So instead of 2 frequencies for private and 2 for your guest, you just have 2 frequencies for your private network. Next, you need to go ahead and change the security for your private networks. You should use 2 different names for your networks. Don't just use network name 2.4 and network 5.0, because then it's obvious that you have 2 networks on the same router using 2 different frequencies, which makes it easier for a hacker to identify and attack your network. Something else to consider is to hide your network. This will prevent your SSID from showing anything other than hidden network, which makes it almost impossible to connect to without knowing the actual network name. This can sometimes cause problems when setting up new devices for smart home devices, but it is something to consider, and you can unhide and hide as you need when you're setting up new devices. Next, use 2 different passwords, one for each network. So you're going to have your 2.4 gigahertz network and your 5 gigahertz network, and then you're going to have a password for it and a password for it. So you're going to have 2 separate passwords. Both of these passwords should be different than your modem password and your router password that you use to access all the admin stuff and the setup and so on and so forth with your settings. When using your passwords for your wireless network frequencies, go ahead and use the WPA2 AES encryption since it's the strongest of them all currently. You may have to select the WPA2 in a drop-down and then in a separate drop-down menu select the AES, but definitely make sure that you have the proper encryption there. Don't forget to periodically check for firmware updates on both your modem and your router. Your modem's updates will actually be provided by your ISP and can be taken care of by a simple call to them. The router updates will actually come from the router manufacturer. If you can, use your router's firewall. This should be turned on, but if it's not, go ahead and turn it on. This adds an extra layer of security. At this point, you should be using 4 different passwords: modem, router, 2.4 gigahertz private network, and 5 gigahertz private network. And I know that it's already annoying enough to keep those 4 passwords straight, but consider changing the network passwords often for your 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz networks. If you have a network switch that is managed, go ahead and change the password and username on it. This will increase your passwords up to 5 now. I know you're probably going to hate me, but honestly, the more passwords can usually mean better security. Some users who are tech savvy will also install a physical firewall on their network. While this is unnecessary for most users, it's not a bad idea, but it does also add a little bit of complication for setting certain things up, like online gaming, but it also adds another password. Sorry. Something else that you should do is remove any unused devices from your network. For example, I have an iPad, really old. I use it maybe once every 3 months or so. So when I'm not using it, it gets disconnected from the wireless network and powered off. Every device that is currently on my network, I use at least once per week. If you're not using your devices often, say once per week, you need to remove it from your network until you need it. Removing it can simply be just powering the device off. I would suggest disconnecting, then powering it off, but powering it off is a start for the security aspect of it. Something worth considering is to look at the security tab in your router settings. It's sometimes hidden in the advanced settings. Even if it's not, check it out and check out the advanced settings. They will both give you a lot more control over your network, such as parental settings, schedules, and even blocking certain websites. Something else that you should come across in the advanced settings would be the remote management. Unless you plan on monitoring your network while you're away from home, it's best just to shut it off because it's one less port for anybody to hack into. Consider using some sort of VPN service. This helps hide your location, prevents most ad tracking, and a number of other benefits that could provide additional security to your home network and devices. For those of you that don't know, VPN stands for Virtual Private Network, which essentially creates an encrypted tunnel for your internet traffic to pass through. Always keep your devices healthy with security software, virus scans, avoiding potentially hazardous websites and applications, and always keeping your devices up to date. I know sometimes new updates can break things, so it is okay to stay one version back, but try to stay up to date as much as possible. So what about your guests? You know, people come over, first thing they do, hey, what's your Wi-Fi password? Well, don't give your password to everybody who comes over. Not everybody needs to be on your wireless network. And if you do allow for someone to join your network, enter the password yourself instead of physically giving it to them. And when it comes to your wired networks, also don't allow for just anyone to join and just plug in, especially if you're unsure of what they're using it for. I'm not saying that you shouldn't trust your friends and family, but if their device is infected in any way, it could potentially get to all of your devices on your home network, which includes your phones, your tablets, computers, smart home devices, home security devices, and so on and so forth. And you know, if you were to get some sort of virus on a home security system, whether it's a camera or something else, it's a huge pain to take care of and fix that. Or if it gets on your server, if you have a home server, you know, that could be a pain to work on. So just be cautious of who you let on your home network. One last thing, monitor your network. My router has an app that I can use, as well as a browser web page that I can also use. This allows for me to change settings, update firmware, and even view the devices that are on my network. If you are unsure of a device, remove it. It may be a friend's phone, a family member's computer, or even one of your devices that you just off the top of your head kind of forgot about. But you can remove the device and always re-add it once you figure out what it is or who it belongs to. I actually went through and made a spreadsheet of all of my devices, their names, their MAC addresses, even the current IP addresses that they're pulling. And then I went through and I renamed those on my network. I went through the router's webpage and said, okay, this MAC address lines up with this name, so I started this device, so I started putting the names in, so that way I could match and see, you know, all their IPs, see what they're doing. And so while it does sound like a pain and a long process, which it can be depending on how many devices you have, I know for me it took like an hour because I had 3 devices. I'm going, what is that? And so it took a little bit of troubleshooting, finding all my MAC addresses and everything, but I was able to do it. It's worth it because now I can monitor my known versus unknown devices. And should you find an unknown device that you cannot figure out whose it is or what it is, I would highly suggest changing your SSID and changing your password for both your 2.4 gigahertz frequency and your 5 gigahertz frequency networks. I hope that all of those tips and tricks will help you stay secure. Be sure to ask any questions if you have them, and as always, thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe.